Hello everyone. Is that okay? Yeah, can you hear that? Okay, great. So now it is no more Mr. Fun Guy, now it's Mr. Serious Guy. So now I will see what happens tonight, and just maybe a slight change of pace because people are different, so we'll see what happens. Is everybody here? Yeah? Enough people are here? Yeah? Enough people are here, okay. Okay, so let's see how these things go. And then we'll continue tomorrow morning as well. Ajahn Brahm will not be here tomorrow morning, so I will do some sutta tomorrow morning as well. So sometimes what happens is that these questions are leftovers from Ajahn Brahm, so I have to kind of answer on Ajahn Brahm's behalf, but we'll see what happens as we go through this. So dear Ajahn, can you say more? There you are, more, right? It's already referring to Ajahn Brahm probably, about the stream of consciousness that passes from life to life, and why they are so hard to see with metta. Okay, so this is actually mentioned in the suttas, the idea of the stream of consciousness. It's called the Vijnana Sota. Vijnana consciousness, Sota is stream. And according to that, you can see how this stream transfers from one life and then goes on to the next one. You can see the continuity in that sequence of causes, right? Consciousness is just another causal sequence, really. Things are connected through conditions such as karma and all these things, and it moves then from life to life. It's the same stream. It's not an identical thing. It's not something that is always the same, but it's connected by the thing we call karma, or by continuity, or by habits and all this kind of stuff. So why is it hard to see? Well, it's hard to see because you have to remember your past lives. Yeah. So first of all, you have to practice the right view, then right intention, the right effort, all the silas, the right samadhi, get the fourth jhana maybe. So if you have the fourth jhana, then you can think about kind of remembering your past life. That's why it is hard, right? It's not straightforward. It takes a while to get there. It's not hard, it's just that you have to learn to let go. Yeah, that's really all it is. It's not difficult, it's just that it takes a while to train your mind that far. That's really all it is. So the Dhamma is not really hard. It's just that it's just a change of perspective, a different way of looking at the world. And as you do that, it's very natural. Yeah, it just happens. And then it's actually quite easy. You think, wow, why was this so hard? It's actually so easy to do. Yeah, that's really, yeah. Okay. So I hope that kind of makes sense. So this is one of the strange things about the Dhamma, and one of the strange things about the idea of life and about the idea of rebirth, is that it is continuity and change at the same time. Yeah, so things are always changing, the mind is always changing, consciousness is always changing. Nothing is every 2 moments are always different, one from the other one. And you can kind of feel that. You feel things are always changing. Maybe except if you get into deep samadhi, maybe things are quite steady. Apart from that, things are always moving here. And it's quite easy to see that, at least to some extent. But also there is continuity, and it is from that continuity that you get this perception of being somebody. Yeah, it's having a sense of identity, of me being me and you being you. That comes from that sense of continuity which is there. And that continuity is really just the habits that we carry with us from one life to another one. That's pretty scary. Isn't that scary? Because it's not just the good habits that you carry with you carry with you the bad habits as well. So now you have the chance to do something about those bad habits, so do something now. Otherwise, next life, same bad habits. Yeah. And this is scary because it means that you carry these things with you again and again and again, and you kind of never get out of them, and you wonder, how come I keep on suffering? How come I keep on meeting the same problems? Well, because the habits, the way that you deal with the world, the way you deal with things is the same. And that's why you tend to end up with the same problems also in life after life, the same kind of issues re-arising all the time. After a while, you had enough of these issues. Yeah, aren't you kind of? If you think about your life you have lived so far, however long that is, and you think that you have to do this same thing, roughly the same thing, many times again, is that kind of satisfactory? Would you like to kind of go through all of those things one more time? Being young, being a child, going through all the problems with being a child, going to school, all of those things again and again and again. And after a while, you think, okay, enough of this. This is what it comes down to. Okay, so I hope that makes a little bit of sense. So we'll see. Go for the next one here. Okay, that has been crossed out. Okay, how do animals get out of the animal realm? Okay, so that is a good question. It is not by making good karma, right? Actually, there are some nice stories about animals making good karma, not in the suttas, but in like the Jatakas and the Dhammapada commentary and these kind of places. So whether those stories are true or whether they have any realistic basis is uncertain. But there are some kind of strange stories about. There is a story about a monkey offering something to the Buddha, and then the monkey gets so happy, goes straight to the heavenly realm. Yeah, there's one story here. Whether that actually is possible or not, I don't know, but maybe it is possible. Maybe as an animal you can kind of feel the presence of somebody very special, and you feel kind of happy about that. It's maybe conceivable, yeah, it's maybe possible. But generally speaking, it is very hard to get out of the animal realm once you're born there. And one of the kind of famous symbols that we find in the suttas, this is found in the Balapandita Sutta, which means the wise and the fools and the wise people. And what it says is that when you throw a yoke is like a kind of just a wheel or whatever, yeah, throw it on the ocean, and then you have a blind turtle in this ocean, and every 100 years this blind turtle comes up to the surface. What is the chance of that blind turtle sticking its head through that yoke? Yeah, it's pretty remote. Yeah, the ocean is vast, and kind of by accident it has to kind of come through, stick its head through that yoke. So very remote possibility here. But eventually, if it keeps on coming up every 100 years, eventually it will happen. According to the sutta, that's how long it takes before you come out of the animal realm. Yeah, until that blind turtle sticks its head through that yoke on the ocean. So it can be very hard, and this is, once you have been reborn in those realms, it can be very difficult to get out again. This is why it is very useful to avoid that kind of rebirth in the first place. So how does the animal get out of that? The way is essentially by using up its bad karma. Yeah, you have got there by bad karma, eventually kind of the bad karma ripens, it wears out, and then some other karma will ripen. That other karma ripens, you get out of the animal realm. There's a nice story I just read. I've been translating a little bit of the monastic Vinaya from Pali into English, and there's a nice story there. There is a monk who is a regurgitator. Yeah, have you met people who are regurgitators before? Yeah, just like kangaroos, right, or cows. Yeah, the food, you swallow food, the food comes back up again, and you just chew a bit more, and you swallow down again. Yeah, we actually had a monk like that once. It's true. Seriously, he was a regurgitating monk. Anyway, this is from the suttas, and the suttas. This particular Vinaya rather, and in this story, in the Vinaya, there's this monk who is a regurgitator. Yeah, he eats, and then kind of the food comes back up again. He chews a bit more and swallows down. Yeah, and then the monks start complaining. This monk, he's eating after midday. Yeah, his food, bringing the food back up and eating after midday. That's what they're saying. So they go to the Buddha and they say to the Buddha, wow, this monk, he's a really bad monk. He's doing all the kind of really bad habits here. And so the Buddha says, well, the reason this monk is doing this is because he was a cow in a recent life. He's just been reborn from the cow realm. It's true, this is actually what it says according to the sutta. Maybe true, right? It kind of makes sense, because where do these habits come from? And obviously these habits must come from somewhere. And it's quite likely that, this is kind of the cause and effect you can see here. And then the Buddha says it's okay, if you are a regurgitator and you bring it up into your mouth, you are allowed to swallow it back down again. But it says you can't take it out. Yeah, once you take it out, if you eat it, then that's when it gets too much. It's a bit disgusting, isn't it? I don't know if it is. That is actually a story in the Vinaya. The Vinaya is this is why the Vinaya is so interesting. It has all these kind of weird stories that you don't find anywhere else. But of course, also remember that, if you are an animal, one of the things that you respond to is the kindness of people. Yeah, so if you, it's just with animals, just as it is with people, if you feel relaxed and you feel at ease and you feel good about yourself, it is more likely that good karma will ripen as a consequence. So if you are kind to your pets rather than kind of kick them in the, that kind of things, I'm sure you are. I don't have any doubts about that you are that. But if you are, you're actually in a sense helping that animal, giving it more of a chance for the good karma to ripen, so it can get a rebirth better rebirth in the future. Because when you are relaxed, when you are at ease, that is when good karma has a chance to ripen. If you are anxious and afraid, it tends to make things worse. So I think this is one of the best things that we can do for animals, is to be kind and helpful and do our best to support them in that way. Okay. Okay, so dear Ajahn, famous motivational speakers said, you don't get what you want because you don't want it hard enough. In short, they encourage people to strengthen our will in order to be successful. Just to confirm, strengthening will doesn't actually bring more, make things happen. Success, wealth and health, etc. No, I think that goes against the kind of the Buddhist teachings, that strengthening the will makes things happen. Sometimes you can use willpower. Sometimes willpower can, sometimes you have to use a little bit of willpower. It's unavoidable, especially in ordinary life. You have to kind of, just to get things done, you have to use willpower. But I wouldn't recommend it. The kind of things that people get through willpower are not really worth having anyway. What can you get through willpower? Maybe you can get some material wealth. You can have some success in a company or whatever. And on the way, because you use a lot of willpower, maybe you make some bad karma at the same time. This often happens. If you have a lot of willpower, if you identify with your will, and your will is very much an important aspect of who you think you are, you will tend to kind of, do bad things at the same time because of that identity with the will. You will use that willpower at the wrong time, and you maybe not have enough compassion for people around you and all these kind of things. So it will tend to have negative consequences as well. Because often when you have a lot of willpower, it is also because you are very ambitious. You want to get things done. You have to get in top of the hierarchy in the company, or you have to kind of get a relationship with this particular person or whatever it is. And because it is so important for you, because you are so ambitious about that, that will override other factors such as being kind and compassionate and doing the right thing. And this is part of the problem. When it's too much willpower, your priorities are very often wrong. You prioritize things that really you really shouldn't prioritize, and those things that really matter in life you forget about. So what is it that matters? It's not what we do in life, but how we live life that matters. Success is fine. It doesn't matter. So you can be successful in the worldly way, but it's how you have that success that really matters. If you do it in the right way, with the right intention, with the right motivation, then you will have success also on a much deeper level, on the personal level of contentment and happiness and all of these kind of things. So generally speaking, even if willpower can sometimes bring you a little bit of success in the worldly sense, it will often destroy other more profound aspects of happiness. And that is why it is really problematic. So it is not really worthwhile developing too much willpower, I think. So I think this is one of the problems, is that success is often wrongly defined. We think of success as one thing, but success actually is something completely different. Success is not about all this worldly stuff. Success is actually found in a completely different place. And that is kind of really the problem, I think. Okay. Do all arahants experience Nirodha Samapatti? Thank you, Ajahn. Wow, okay. Do all arahants experience this? Nirodha Samapatti, this is, in the sutras, it's called Sanya Vidaita Nirodha, which means the cessation of perception and feeling. And this is like a attainment or a state where you kind of go through all the jhanas, you go all the way through the immaterial attainments, and eventually you go to a state where everything stops. Everything stops. That's why it's called Nirodha. Nirodha means cessation. Samapatti means like attainment. So this is the attainment of cessation. Everything stops. And it's quite weird, right? How do you even know that you were there? How can you possibly know? If everything stops, how can you know it actually happened? Any ideas? What do you think? How do you know that it was there? If everything is gone, right? Everything stops. How do you know this actually happened? And the way you know it from inference, not because you're not there, right? If everything is gone, everything is just blank. You know it through inference. You can see that as you are approaching Nirodha Samapatti, as everything is about to cease, you can see the mind leaning in that direction, going that direction, and then everything is gone. Yeah, and then suddenly afterwards, when you emerge, it emerges with the subtler things first, and then more coarser and coarser things emerge afterwards. And you can know by inference that you must have things must have stopped and ceased completely in the middle. That's how you know that. That's how it actually exists, or how you can be aware of it. Do all arahants experience this? I don't think so, because remember, according to the suttas, you don't have to have the immaterial attainments to become an arahant. If you have a jhana attainment, that's enough. So you don't actually have to experience these things. The main idea of being an arahant is that you have insight. You understand the nature of things. So you understand the idea of Nirodha Samapatti. You know what it is about. You know it's possible. You know what it means. You know it is the highest happiness. This is kind of interesting, that this is the highest happiness. Yeah. Everything stops and it is the highest happiness. It's one of those extraordinary paradoxes of Buddhism. If you look at the way that happiness is described in the suttas, there's a sutta called the Bahu Vedana Sutta, I think it's called, Majjhima Nikaya 59 or something. And it talks about feelings. Vedana is feeling. Bahu is many, it's the many kinds of feelings. And it starts off with ordinary sense pleasures. Yeah, that's at the very, very bottom, as rock bottom. This is what everybody strives for in the world, right? Everybody, more sense pleasures, more relationships, more kind of nice entertainment, all this kind of thing. It's a rock bottom in Buddhism, absolutely down there. And the Buddha says, forget about that, it's not worth it, yeah? And then, after that comes first jhana, yeah? Why is first jhana so much happiness? Because it has the Vivekaja Pitisukha, the Pitisukha based on seclusion, Vivekaja. Seclusion from what? Seclusion from the five senses and the five hindrances. And then you go to the second jhana, which is the Samadhija Pitisukha. Samadhi means born of Samadhi. So now you attain real Samadhi for the first time, and you have the Pitisukha, the happiness based on that. Then you go to the third jhana, yeah? And when you go to the third jhana, the piti ceases, and all you have left is sukha, which is happiness. And then the Buddha says in there that one of the standard phrases of the third jhanas is that this is what the Aryans, how does it go again in Pali now? This is what the Aryans call happiness and clear comprehension. I can't remember exactly the wording now, but this is what the Aryans call happiness in the world, yeah? It's kind of typical Buddhist understatement. The Buddha is very understated. He's like a cultivated Englishman, right? Understated, does not kind of exaggerate things. So when the Buddha says, this is happiness, it means this is the highest happiness. Nothing beyond this. That's what it means. And quite literally. So this is what the Aryans call happiness. And then comes the remarkable thing. When you move from the third jhana to the fourth jhana, happiness stops. There is no happiness in the fourth jhana, it's just equanimity. And then the Buddha says, when you go from the highest happiness that is possible to experience in samsaric existence, when you go from that to equanimity, you're more happy. So when you give up happiness, you're more happy. Yeah. Isn't that this is a paradox of Buddhism. This is one of those weird things, and it's almost impossible to understand without experiencing these things. Yeah, you actually got to do this. So when there is just pure equanimity, you're just completely equanimous about everything. That is a higher happiness than happiness itself. It's a different type of happiness. It's not felt happiness, but it's a happiness of a different type. And then the sutta continues from that. It goes into the immaterial realms. Yeah, these are really high dhammas. This is like kind of mind-blowing dhamma stuff. So if you think this is weird and this is really out there, then you have a good reason to think that, because it is pretty weird. So then you go to the immaterial attainments, the infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, yeah? The experience of nothingness. Imagine that, what can that be like? You experience nothingness. Then you go beyond nothingness, And then eventually you go to Nirodha Samapatti, which is this one here. And then, when you get to this is the highest happiness. But in this state, in this attainment, not only is there no happiness, there is nothing at all. There's no conscious nothing. And yet this is the highest happiness. Yeah. And this is kind of the paradox of the Buddhist teaching, that happiness, and this is actually stated somewhere. It's a famous sutta where a monk called Venerable Udayin goes to the Buddha or Venerable Sariputta, and he says, how can there be any happiness there when nothing is even felt? And then Venerable Sariputta replies, well, that is precisely why it is happiness, because nothing is felt. Feeling itself is a problem. When you take away feeling, that is when you achieve the highest happiness. So I don't know whether you think this makes any sense. But this is the Dhamma. The Dhamma is in many ways very strange and very marvelous and quite extraordinary. And in one way, it is what is so beautiful about this, even though you can't really make any sense out of this. And maybe hopefully you are enjoying your meditation here. Are you enjoying your meditation here? Yeah? Everyone? Yeah? Great. So you're enjoying your meditation already. But this shows you that for most of you, how many of you have attained Nirodha Samapatti here? Yeah? Okay. So there is still a long way to go, right? And this is what makes it so exciting. You're already enjoying yourself and you have all this way to go into the future. Isn't that wonderful? There's all these kind of marvelous attainments waiting for you to get into in the future. So this is kind of the marvels about this beautiful Buddhist path. So anyway, so that is, I hope that helps. So let's go to the next one here. Dear Ajahn, do you see lay people reaching states of jhana through practice? Ajahn Brahm is much more experienced with teaching, obviously, than I am, and I have asked him myself the same question before, and he reckons that there are a few lay people who do achieve states of jhana, so it is certainly possible. Yeah, especially when you come on a retreat and you kind of just let go of everything and you just enjoy yourself and you follow the instructions in the right way. That possibility is always there. But remember that it depends very powerfully on how you live the rest of your life. This is the most important thing here. If you live the rest of your life well, then there is a chance of achieving these things. That is really the kind of the crucial aspect. When you look at the suttas, you look at the way the Buddha teaches Satipatthana and Anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing, and the four focuses of mindfulness or whatever, you see it is always based on sila and based on right view. These are the kind of basic things that these things depend upon. So the more pure your ordinary life is, the more chances there is of attaining these things on retreat as well. So it is a very holistic path in many ways. So if you keep on doing it, as long as you see progress in your practice, this is one of those most important things on the Buddhist path. Sometimes people look for attainments. Please don't look for attainments. What instead you should look for is that you're making progress. As long as you're making progress, attainments will eventually have to happen. Yeah? Make progress, eventually attainments obviously they must come because you're heading in the right direction. That is what matters. If you're not making progress, then you have to ask yourself why. What is going on here? Yeah, and you have to find the source of the problem, why it isn't working here. So this is what I always do with my practice. I don't really ask myself about attainments at all because I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. Am I making progress? And because I kind of been making progress for the last 22 years, then I'm content. I'm happy with that. That's really all that matters as far as I'm concerned. And this is actually straight from the suttas, by the way. This is the Buddha's advice, so that's really all I'm quoting there. Okay, dear Ajahn Brahmali, it is recommended. This is actually a question to me, directly to me. That's very, very good. The other one's not entirely sure, but this one is. Is it recommended that one has deep meditation experiences before solitary practice is encouraged, or can it be a catalyst for stillness? I.e., when is solitary practice good, and for which kind of people, personalities, or metta? Solitary practice depends what you mean by that. Yeah, it depends on what degree of solitary practice. There are some people who practice extreme solitariness or whatever it is, and that it takes a lot of samadhi before you really should practice being in solitude in extreme quantities and also in extreme circumstances. I know some monks, there's one monk in Sri Lanka I know about, and he lives in the jungle all the time pretty much. And he goes in the morning, he goes into the village, he goes pindabat, he gets food, and he goes back to his kuti again. His kuti is about several kilometers from the nearest village. And that only human contact he has throughout the day is that one trip into the village in the day just to receive his alms food. Then he goes back again. And for the rest of the time, all he sees is snakes, mosquitoes, that sort of thing. Leeches maybe, nice. So this is his life, And to be able to endure that sort of thing, if you do it week after week after week, year after year, the only way you can do that is if you have reasonably good samadhi. And that is why it is so inspiring to see people who live in solitude. Like Ajahn Brahm, when he went on 6 months of solitude, the only way you can do that and come out not absolutely mad, with big eyes, the only way you can do that is by actually having good samadhi. And the Buddha says as much in the suttas. There's a famous sutta with Venerable Upali. Venerable Upali was one of the Sakyans. He was one of the barbers of the Sakyans. And he went to the Buddha, Master or Bhagava, please, I'd like to go into solitude and practice. Can you please give me teaching here? And the Buddha says to him, well, until you have the jhanas, stay in the Sangha. Better for you to stay in the Sangha. And this is something that you see throughout the suttas, the idea that you have samadhi first, ideally jhana states, and then you kind of withdraw into the forest, into a nice cave or something like that, and that's when you start practicing in absolute solitude. So get your samadhi together first, and then we'll find a nice cave for you, and then you can come, and we'll sort you out, and we'll see what happens. But the problem is that if you go into solitude too quickly, basically you end up going mad, basically. That's what happens to people. So that's what you want to avoid in this situation. But a little bit of solitary practice can be good, as long as it is not too much. In our monastery, everybody goes at least 2 weeks on solitary practice every year. And I think 2 weeks is okay. But for some people, even 2 weeks is too much. They start to go a little bit nuts by the end of 2 weeks. So, but sometimes it's nice just to hang out by yourself and just do your own thing, and then you learn what you can take. But be very careful. The strange thing about going crazy or kind of losing your sense of touch with the reality, becoming deluded, is very gradual. People don't really realize it's happening. You can maybe feel it a little bit, but it's not really clear what's going on. And suddenly one day you find yourself completely out of it. So it's a gradual descent, and that's why it is very kind of dangerous, this thing of delusion is very difficult to see. Just like right now, the delusion of a sense of self, you're not really aware of that. In the same way, other delusions too can be very hard to catch as your mind slides in the wrong direction, so to speak. Okay. Okay, breath is considered body in the 5 khandhas. Is it because breath comes from the nose sensation? Is that why it is called the body? The way it is explained in the Anapanasati Sutta, it says there that the breath is a body among bodies. And the idea is that the word kaya in Pali doesn't, the main meaning of the word kaya, which is often translated as body, is not actually physical body here. The main meaning is like a conglomeration of things. A body, like in English, the body, a corporate body. What does that mean? A corporate body means lots of stuff together making a corporation. So you have a corporate body. Or you can have a body of documents in English, for example. You can have many different ways the word body can be used. And it doesn't just mean physical body. In Pali, even more so. Body in Pali, kaya in Pali, means just an aggregate of things coming together. One of those aggregate of things coming together is the physical body. So it can be then divided up into 31 parts. Visuddhimagga says 32, Sutta says 31. This is really important Dhamma for you right there. I'm just joking. Not very important. So, But so it means conglomeration, and that's why the breath can also be called a body, right? It's a body of all possible breaths, short breaths, long breaths, rough breaths, fine breaths, all different breaths. That's called the body of breaths. And that's why the breath is called the body here, because it kind of puts all of those things together here. That's quite literally what it says in there. It says that this is called, the breath meditation is called a body contemplation because the breaths are considered a body in this way here. Yeah, so that is straight from the sutras, and that's why it is there. So this is it's actually quite interesting when you read the Anapanasati Sutta, which is one of the most important sutras, in my opinion, on breath, on meditation at all. And the reason why it is so important is because breath meditation is explained so many times in the sutras. You see it almost everywhere. And when something occurs many, many times, then you know that the Buddha must have taught it in many different situations. And to different people and different locations and all of this. And this is how you can decide whether something is an important teaching in the sutras. So breath meditation is obviously quite important. So what is interesting about this is that if you read the Anapanasati Sutta, at the end of each tetrad, the Anapanasati Sutta is divided into 16 steps. Have you done the sutta with Ajahn Brahm? Yes, he has done it. Okay, so 16 steps, right? Divided into 4 steps at the time, and each group of 4 steps corresponds to one of the satipatthanas. Yeah. So when you do the first 4 steps, it corresponds to body contemplation. The second to Vedana contemplation, the contemplation of feeling. The third one, steps 9 to 12, correspond then to the mind contemplation, Chittanupassana, and the last 4 to the Dhammanupassana, the last aspect of the satipatthanas. So what the sutta is saying is that all you have to do is to watch the breath, and if you do that properly, you fulfill all the 4 satipatthanas. It's quite nice, yeah? Sometimes we hear about satipatthana practice, you see this enormous manuals on how to practice it. It looks very difficult, and there's so many different aspects of the practice, different objects and categories that you can focus on. But the Anapanasati Sutta says that the one way of doing it is simply to focus on the breath. And the whole thing is done through that particular practice. And I would say that if the Buddha says that, I would argue that is the main way of actually doing satipatthana practice, is simply through doing the breath meditation. Otherwise, it isn't really explained anywhere how you do it. How do you actually do Vedanupassana, right? Vedanupassana, if you go to Goenka course, Goenka will say, feel the body, right? That's Vedanupassana. It doesn't actually say that anywhere in the suttas. It may be right, I don't think, not necessarily wrong, but what the sutta actually says watching the breath and then the feeling with that. So if that's what the Buddha says, then I prefer the instructions of the Buddha always. So it makes it nice and simple. That's all you have to do is breath meditation. Some people think, oh no, please, not breath, I want to do something else. Breath too difficult. Then it's okay, then you can do something else. It is quite hard actually, because you have to really be ready to do the breath meditation. It's not so straightforward always. Dear Ajahn, what is the funniest incidents you experienced with Ajahn Brahm, which most people don't know about? The funniest one. You have probably experienced so many funny incidents with Ajahn Brahm on this retreat already. So I'm not sure if we can add it. Can we add to that? I'm not sure what the funniest one I experienced with Ajahn Brahm. Oh, so many here. Ajahn Brahm is, what is the funniest one? Wow, that's a really difficult one here. Funniest one here. It's more difficult to say the most serious one. That's more difficult to say, right, with Ajahn Brahm, than the funniest one. Don't know what the most funniest one is. Where is it here? I think it's not, it is not the funniest thing with Ajahn Brahm, which is the most powerful thing about Ajahn Brahm. What is the most powerful thing with Ajahn Brahm? It's just his spiritual qualities. Of course, the fun is part of that, because the point is that when you are a kind of spiritually mature person, you have a light mind. Yeah, that's kind of the idea. The more spiritually mature you are, the lighter is your mind state, because you don't have the things that hold you down, that make you heavy, are the defilements of the mind. Remove the defilements and you feel light. So, one way of looking if somebody is an arahant is to see how kind of bouncy and happy and kind of light they are. Yeah. That doesn't mean that all comedians are arahants, but but this is like, you have a generally very light disposition, yeah, very light, you feel very, very easygoing, and you don't take things too seriously and all these kind of things. So this is actually one of the qualities of a spiritually advanced person. And the same thing, this is what kind of I find so impressive with somebody like Ajahn Brahm. I've been living with Ajahn Brahm for over 23 years now, yeah. So that's quite a long time. And there's this consistency, strong consistency all the time, very strong consistency. He's a kind of person, you don't see him getting angry. I can't really ever remember Ajahn Brahm getting angry. But sometimes he might kind of be, say something a bit too short, being a bit short with you or something like that, but he doesn't really get upset at all. He's kind of even temperament. Sometimes he gets very busy, and then he'll be a bit short with you, and he kind of gets on with his job. Yeah, that's about as far as it goes usually. And so this is one of the things, this incredible evenness of temperament. The other thing which is very powerful with someone like Ajahn Brahm is the kind of independence, incredibly powerful independence. The whole world can go one way. Ajahn Brahm says, oh yeah, the world can go that way, I'm going to go this way, thank you very much. He doesn't care what everybody else does, he just does what he thinks is right. He has full trust in his own judgment. You can't really push Ajahn Brahm around. If you try to do that, he delights in kind of in frustrating you, right? And you're not going to get anywhere with pushing him around. So this is what I find so powerful with someone like Ajahn. This is what really matters. The funny incidents, they're kind of side stories. Yeah, they're not really so important as far as I'm concerned. So sorry to disappoint with that one, but there you are. Okay. Dear Ajahn, how should one deal with restlessness in meditation? Also the commentary mind. Thank you. How to deal with restlessness in meditation. Okay. I think it's hard, right? It's often very difficult to deal with restlessness. I wouldn't recommend you to sit too much with too much restlessness. Depending on how much you can take, if you feel it gets too much, it's much better sometimes to get up and do something else and allow the mind to sometimes the mind goes through cycles. You can often feel that it goes through a peaceful period, then it goes through a restless period. And if you try to fight those natural cycles of the mind, very often you end up getting frustrated. So if you feel that you are in a restless cycle, don't try too hard to meditate. If you do, you're going to get frustrated, you're going to get fed up, and eventually, as I say, you're going to convert to Christianity instead. We don't want that. That's the last thing we want. Please don't convert to Christianity. I really don't understand. When I hear Buddhists convert to Christianity, I always feel so sad because I come from a Christian background. Christianity is nothing compared to Buddhism, right? This is the real deal. So please hang out with the Buddhists instead. So when you are restless, try. So it really depends on the circumstance. So one is this kind of natural cycles of the mind. If you feel restless, go for a walk in the beautiful forest, check out the kangaroos, listen to the birds. There's beautiful roads around here now you can walk on. Go back and have a cup of tea, or lie down on your bed and take a few breaths, whatever it is, and just kind of chill for a while until kind of the mind kind of comes into a different cycle again, and then come back to your meditation. One of the reasons why the mind is restless, these defilements very often come from the two main defilements of the mind. Actually, the main defilement of the mind, the one which kind of underlies everything, is desire, sensual desire. So if you feel restless, usually there is some underlying desire there. Sometimes you can't even see it, because sometimes it's quite subtle. You don't really know what it is, but you can be pretty sure that there's some underlying problem there that you can't really see. Or the other problem is, of course, ill will, ill will and desire. These are the two main defilements, and this is usually where restlessness comes from. So often what you can do, the best thing to do in meditation if you feel restless, is just to stay with it for a while. Don't try to get rid of it. Just hang out and see what happens. And as you hang out with it as you allow it to be. You don't force it in any way. Sometimes it happens that it just dies down and disappears all by itself. You just wait and you wait. Because you're patient, because you're not feeding it, it means that the underlying desire or ill will that is there, which feeds this state, that underlying thing itself falls away and disappears. Remember that things like ill will and desire, they can only exist if you feed them. Why is there desire in the mind? It's because you have looked at something in a certain way that gives rise to desire. Why is there ill will in the mind? Because you have looked at things in a certain way that gives rise to ill will. If you stop looking at those things in that way, then that desire and ill will would disappear. You're not feeding it anymore. And this is what we're doing when you sit down completely peaceful and you just relax, watching the breath. You're not feeding the defilements, and by not feeding them, the mind tends to calm down. That's the theory, right? So that works sometimes. Theory doesn't always work. So that is one way of doing that. So very often restlessness is not a defilement that you can necessarily work with directly. You have to work with it indirectly in this way. And what you find also is that over time, as you deal with the defilements of the mind, you go back home and you live your life well, you are kind to others and you don't get upset so easily, and you learn new ways of looking at the world. One of the most powerful things, the most important things on the Buddhist path is to learn how to perceive properly, how to look at things in the right way. This is so important, and this is the kind of stuff which makes a massive difference in terms of the defilements of the mind. So what is the biggest problem in life? Well, one of the biggest problems in life is other people. This is often where defilements tend to arise. We get upset with other people, and especially if a society is a very kind of a stressful society. And I know, Singapore people work very hard and all those kind of things. Everywhere is stressful, of course, but maybe Singapore even a bit worse than other places. And of course, in that kind of society, it's very easy to get upset, because of the stress and because of all the things around you. So you have to learn to look at people in the right way, to perceive things in the right way. And as you do that, it's astonishing how that can change your mental state to become a more peaceful and compassionate person. So dealing with perceptions, this is one of the things that is so important in life. So what kind of perceptions? It's very simple, It's really, really simple stuff, but you have to do it again and again and again to learn to change your outlook, to look at things in a different way. So in daily life, when other people upset you, what do you do? And what you do is, again, straight from the suttas, you learn to see the good qualities in the other people, or you learn to have compassion for them because they're being stupid. It's as simple as that. And as you do that, you can overcome almost any kind of anger or ill will in ordinary life. And one of the underlying things here to remember about this is that other people, all of us, to some extent, we are just like robots in a sense. We do things because of past conditioning. We do things because of whatever, coming from a long time in the past, maybe even in past lives. And because we are conditioned so thoroughly and absolutely, and because we act from conditions, it means that very often we have very little ability to act differently from the way we're actually acting here. So if somebody does something bad towards you, if they are being silly, if they're being naughty, if they're doing something that is, they shouldn't be doing, it's not because of you, it's not because they necessarily want to do this. Very often they do that simply because of their own conditioning. It's coming from them. It's about them. It's not about you. So if somebody is nasty towards you, it's got nothing to do with you. It has got to do with them. It's their conditioning here. And once you understand that, other people are acting in a sense, they are, if you like, trapped in their own personality. That's the way I like to look at it. And if you are trapped in your own personality because you're trapped in your own conditioning, then of course the right attitude is to have compassion towards them because they can't act in any other way. It's incredibly powerful. If you learn to look at people in that way, it's almost, after a while, it gets very hard to get upset with anyone because you understand that compassion is the right response. And then you also understand the positive. You see the positive side in these people. You see the good qualities in them, and as you see the good qualities, you rejoice. Wow, isn't it wonderful that they also have all these good qualities at the same time? This is one of the most important things in the long run, if you want to overcome restlessness and all of these defilements, to learn to use your perception, how you look at people, how you look at the world, do it in a skillful way, then you're going to overcome so many of these problems. And the commentary mind is really just more restlessness, yeah? That's part of restlessness, really. The mind is kind of saying stuff all the time. So again, it's part of the same problem there. One of the ways, of course, of also overcoming this is to find happiness in your meditation. And the more happiness you find, the less the mind will do other things, like commentaries and all this kind of stuff. So the more you enjoy it, the less commentary there is, because you're happy the way things are, yeah? So enjoying meditation is such an important part of it. And of course, to enjoy the meditation, you have to be at ease, you have to be relaxed, you have to kind of not be too hard and kind of practice in too hard a way. Yeah. Okay. More of the same, I think. Inner speech and inner thoughts are causes of suffering. Yeah. How peaceful and blissful if all of these disappear. Yes, that is exactly right. That's very peaceful and blissful. So they are definitely cause of suffering. And this is a nice insight, yeah? When this happens the first time and you can see the happiness that comes from a peaceful mind, that kind of gives you an inkling of where happiness really lies in this world. That is a very useful insight already when you start to see that. So these are kind of the little insights on the path when you start to understand suffering and happiness, where it lies and how to actually go about finding these things. So great. So I hope that meant that you are doing well. I assume that's what was the meaning of that. I'm getting peaceful. I presume that was the kind of the message there. So good on you. Okay, let's go on to the next one here. What does Buddhism say about euthanasia, merciful killing in the medical field? Thank you. Okay, so now we're getting into the more controversial stuff. And Buddhism doesn't really say anything directly about euthanasia. The Buddha didn't say euthanasia is okay or anything like that. There is no Buddhist word for euthanasia. But you can deduce what the Buddha had to say about this by just looking at how Buddhist morality works. Yeah, that's really how to find and to deduce what is going on. And Buddhist morality is an intention-based morality. You know whether you're doing something moral by looking at your intentions. Yeah. So what is your intention? That is how you know. So if your intention is if you are greedy or you are angry or something, and because of that you're going to cause some kind of harm to somebody else, that is immoral. Yeah, but the intention or the motivation that is based on compassion and kindness and these kind of things, that is a wholesome intention in Buddhism. So if you're coming from that, you can never actually make bad karma with that kind of intention. So this is really the critical issue that we need to ask in all Buddhism, and to decide if any act is moral or not, is always to go back to the quality of that intention. The intention is imbued with a motivation. The motivation is really the critical issue here. So what is driving the intention? Yeah, motivation is what makes us act. An intention is the actual aim or purpose that we're doing. So you're motivated by anger, you're motivated by greed. My parents are really wealthy and they're getting really old now anyway. They probably want to die anyway, so let me help them with euthanasia. Yeah, that's dangerous, right? If you think like that, whoa, serious trouble. Yeah, and so this is kind of the wrong way of thinking. But if somebody says that I've really had enough of life, I'm kind of have very serious illnesses, and all I have is suffering and problems and all kind of things. I don't really want to go on living anymore. And then somebody helps them with suicide, for example, and you look into your heart and you know that you're coming from compassion, you're coming from wisdom, and you have kind of done all the things that are appropriate to do to make sure that nothing is going wrong. Then in that kind of situation, it cannot be a very bad karma. Yeah, it can maybe even be good karma because you're helping somebody. I think personally that it is, to decide over one's own life is really just another human right. Why should other people decide about our lives? If we want to live or we want to die, why shouldn't we be able to decide those things? That's what I reckon. I think that's a kind of basic human right. And in those situations, then there should be no problem. So it's very interesting, because this idea of Buddhist morality, very often we focus on the 5 precepts, not to kill, not to steal, etc. And when you do that, it's important to remember that the 5 precepts are just an approximation to morality here. They are a very useful approximation, because the 5 precepts, sometimes when you get confused or you get overwhelmed by emotions or by defilements, it's very good to have some very clear guidelines. And those guidelines kind of tell you, okay, be careful, red light, I'm about to steal something, or I'm about to do something bad, or lie, or whatever. So kind of the red light goes up, and you are much more careful, because you know it goes against the precepts. But remember that the precepts are just that. They are an approximation, So because they are approximation, it means that if you look deeper into the issue, you may find that sometimes going against the precepts may be acceptable from a karma point of view. It may be acceptable because you're motivated by wholesome motivations. So that is kind of morality in the final analysis in Buddhism. The morality of intention, the morality of motivation is really what really matters. I was just at Curtin University, one of the universities here in Perth, just the other day, and they had asked one of us to come in to give a talk on Buddhism and human rights. And I talked a bit about Buddhist ideas of morality, because it's very hard sometimes if you don't have any kind of religious background or whatever. It's very hard sometimes to know how moral laws or morality comes about. What actually is moral? How can we find out what morality is? It's one of those fields of philosophy. If you believe in a creator God, it's very easy, because if there's a creator God obviously can lay down everything. Okay, this is moral. If you created the universe, you kind of have the right to lay down all the rules, right? So okay, do this, don't do that, and that kind of stuff. But in Buddhism, we haven't got that. So in Buddhism, we have to think differently. And this is why Buddhism has a very different approach to morality than almost all other religions. It's a morality based on natural principles. And these principles are principles of intention and motivation and these kind of things. So this is interesting when you give a talk at the university, which is a secular institution, obviously, because for them, the whole morality issue is a bit of a conundrum. How do we deduce the moral laws? And I think this is kind of the areas where Buddhism has actually a lot to teach, perhaps, or a lot to contribute to the debate about these things, because Buddhism has a very kind of profound understanding of the mind and these things. So Buddhist ethics is a natural-based ethics, based on natural principles, and for that reason, quite acceptable, I think, to most secular society as well. Yep, hold on to your teddy bear here. Yep. Very good. Okay, so I hope that makes sense, and you can apply these ideas to any kind of moral dilemma you might face. Always ask yourself, where are you coming from? What is driving the action? If what is driving the action is purity, kindness, compassion, wisdom, all of these things, then basically you are you're basically safe. But be careful, right? Be very careful. Don't kind of fool yourself. I'm being compassionate. Don't think like that. Don't take it too easy, because then you may be fooling yourself. You really have to be sure that you are acting in the right way. Okay. Very good. So let us get on to the next one. Dear Ajahn Brahmali, how does a monk or nun know he or she has achieved enlightenment? What are the signs? Thank you. So what are the signs? You want the external signs so you can tell? Is that what you want? Or do you want the internal signs? So if somebody says, I am enlightened, usually it's a bad sign, right? That usually means maybe not. That's one of the signs you know. Often it is easy to know that somebody is not enlightened than to actually know that they are enlightened. Because the way to know that somebody is not enlightened is just to look for all those negative things. If somebody gets angry or upset, or they have lots of Rolex watches, that kind of stuff, usually it's a sign that they're not enlightened, because there's too much greed there. There's too much defilements going on. So this is one of the ways to look at the character of someone. And an important part of that as well, if you haven't got it's not just that the defilements have disappeared, but when the defilements disappear, it actually gives rise to all these positive qualities. Yeah? So someone who doesn't get angry, it's not just that they're not angry, it is actually that they have a lot of kindness in them. They tend to be compassionate, they tend to have metta, they tend to be peaceful. So removal of the defilements actually leads also to a large number of very positive qualities at the same time. So these are the things that you look for in the outside. And the Buddha says specifically in the Vimangsika Sutta, in the Majjhima Nikaya 47, that you investigate the Buddha. In the Chanka Sutta, you say investigate any spiritual teacher here, and you look for these defilements. In other words, it is possible to see these things in people when you look carefully here, at least to some extent. Sometimes you can never be 100% sure, but at least you can have some guidance as to what happens. But how do you know yourself if you are enlightened? Yeah? Does that mean that you are doing really well and you think you might be enlightened? Is that you want to kind of know whether you are enlightened or not? Maybe you should. If you really are enlightened, it means that you will probably come up and want to become ordained straight away, right? So if that's the case, please come up afterwards and we will help you out. So this teddy bear is almost ordained already. So it'll be nice and brown. This one here is more like a patchwork of. Not sure about this one. Very, very interesting one, that one. So, so enlightenment from an internal point of view, from a person who is enlightened, is that you actually know from personal experience that all rebirth has been ended. That's how you know that you are enlightened. So you know inside of you that the defilements have come to an end. You know that the rebirth has come to an end. And this is a certainty that you achieve with awakening. Craving has come to an end, and you actually know there's no more rebirth in the future. So enlightenment experience, you're absolutely certain when it happens. You have no doubt about it afterwards. If you have doubts, then it means you're not enlightened yet. And so that's really, and even things like jhana experiences, these are very, very extremely powerful experiences. Like positive traumas, Ajahn Brahm calls these things sometimes. They're so powerful that usually when you've had an experience like that, you have no doubt that what has actually happened. You know what's going on now. So that is about enlightenment. A lot of the time there are so many claims around of people being enlightened. You hear about people being enlightened here and there and all these things. And I would advise you to suspend judgment a lot of the time. Don't say yes, don't say no, say maybe, shrug your shoulders. Very often these things are very hard to know. And a lot of these things are very, very, very unreliable claims. And the reason why it is so unreliable, one of the reasons is because almost everyone wants their teacher to be enlightened. So I want Ajahn Brahm to be enlightened. So I think, Ajahn Brahm. And if you go travel around the world and you kind of go to monasteries here and there, almost everyone says, oh yeah, my teacher, he's enlightened, he's an arahant, or she is an arahant, or whatever. Because we have that natural tendency to want our teacher to be enlightened. It kind of makes sense. Otherwise, why would you stay with that teacher? So very often you tend to read things into people. So just even if the whole world says somebody is enlightened, be careful. Just stand back and make your own judgment. It's far more safe than kind of following the crowds. Because these things are inherently difficult to know. Okay. Okay, rightful acts, I think it is, stress that we should not kill living beings. Why is it okay for Theravada Buddhism to eat meat and fish? Isn't eating animals, we are indirectly killing them? Please clarify, thank you. Okay, so this is one of those questions that we have on every retreat, So I think that there's a number of things about this. And the first thing I want to say, I think it's great to be vegetarian. I think it's good. I think if people want to be vegetarian, it's wonderful. And when you do that, be vegetarian in a good way. Do it out of compassion for animals. Do it out of compassion for the world, because of eating meat is very resource intensive and all these things. I think there's many, many good reasons for being a vegetarian. And I think it's good on you if you are a vegetarian. I'm mostly a vegetarian myself as well, because I think it's a great way. It's a good way to live, actually. But it is not, remember the Buddha, one of the main things about, again, morality in Buddhism is the intention that you have. And just by eating meat, you don't actually have the intention to kill the animal. You go to the shop, you kind of, you buy the meat, you don't think, hey, this animal has been murdered, this is great, I like this, and then you buy the meat. You don't think like that, yeah? When you go to the shop and you get the meat, you just buy the meat off the counter, it's already dead, and then you don't actually have an intention for that animal to die. Yes, you are part of a system which kills animals, and that is true, but whether you eat that meat or not is not going to make a massive difference. And from a personal perspective of morality, it is the act of killing itself that has very powerful karmic repercussions that will actually sit in your mind afterwards and make you feel bad about yourself. So if you kill an animal, it will have bad effect on your mind, and you will often feel that. You'll feel really guilty and bad about it afterwards. But if you go and buy meat, right, or if I eat some meat in the monastery because meat is offered, I don't feel particularly bad about it afterwards. It doesn't have a very powerful effect on my mind, and because of that, it's not really necessary to be a vegetarian to practice the path or to reach awakening or anything like that. Because the effect on the mind is not very strong. So these are the two different outlooks. So please, I think it's, again, I think it's very useful to be a vegetarian. If you do so, do it out of compassion and kindness, and if you do that in the right way, you can actually enhance your practice a little bit, because you feel that you're doing the right thing to the world around you, you're supporting people, supporting animals, and by doing that, it actually has a positive effect. But sometimes people who are vegetarian, they become, sometimes, not many, but occasionally become very kind of self-righteous, and they want to convert other people. That's kind of the worst kind of vegetarians. And also, because it also tends to deteriorate your own practice. If you do that, it makes you it kind of destroys that positive thing that you're supposed to bring, and it makes it into a negative thing instead. So, and the reason why we eat meat in Theravada Buddhism is because the Buddha basically didn't lay down any rules against eating meat. So the Buddha himself is known to have eaten meat occasionally, especially as a monastic. You eat what you are offered. So if somebody offers you meat, you accept that out of gratitude to the donor. If you don't, it's kind of a bit mean. What are you offering meat? No way, I'm not going to eat meat. Go away. It's not nice, and I think the Buddha recognized that at the time. So if the donors offer meat, then you accept that. But as a monk, which is interesting, you're not actually allowed to eat any meat when the animal has been specifically killed for you. You can't do that. So if you know that animal has been killed for you, then you have to actually say no specifically here. So I hope that makes sense, and if not, then come back next year. We'll try again next year. Okay. Dear Ajahn, when a nimitta arises, who is it that recognizes the nimitta? If it's awareness, could you please explain that a bit more? What is awareness? Okay. So what is awareness? Awareness is what you're using right now to understand what I'm saying, unless you find it so boring you're thinking about something else. Of course, in that case, your awareness is in a different place. Awareness is just your ability to know what's happening in the present moment, Whether you are listening to a talk, or whether you are doing whatever, or even if you're daydreaming, there is some degree of awareness there. But at the very least, you are aware of the daydream. So that awareness is just the ability to know, the ability to have to be clear about what's going on. But awareness has many different degrees, It has many different strengths. And this is one of the things that you find in your meditation practice, that as you calm down, as the mind becomes clear, as the defilements kind of fall away, that mindfulness becomes more clear. And mindfulness is really just another word for awareness. So the strength of your awareness depends on the defilements of your mind. And the less defilements you have in the mind, the more clear that awareness is. You have clarity about what's going on here and now. You're not distracted by the past and the future, but you stay in the present moment. That's really all it is. Awareness, consciousness, mindfulness. These are words that mean roughly the same thing here. So it is that awareness that is aware of the nimitta, aware of the breath, aware of the jhana, or whatever it is. And so one of the things about the Buddhist teachings is that sometimes, one of the kind of the things that people often ask about, when I teach retreats in various places, people often ask, what are the 5 khandhas? It's a very interesting question because it seems to be so obvious. The 5 khandhas, one of the basic categories of Buddhism, one of the things like kind of the constituents of what it is to be a being. And yet people very often ask, what is it? And I find it fascinating because you assume that people have some idea about the 5 khandhas. But actually, I can actually understand that. I can understand why people ask this question because it's very kind of theoretical, right? You divide up consciousness, perception, volition, into these categories. But what actually is it? How does it relate to my own personal experience? And so the 5 khandhas, really, the way to understand them is just through your experience. What is it that you are experiencing right now? What is this experiencing right now? And this experiencing you're having right in this moment is the 5 khandhas. That's what it is. It's nothing apart from this experience in this moment. And this experience in this moment, you can artificially, if you like, divide it up into various aspects. One of that is awareness. It's only an artificial division because really experience comes as a complete package. The package is, okay, you see stuff, you hear stuff, you are aware, you have feelings, all these kind of things. It comes as one thing, and you can artificially divide it up into different segments. One segment being awareness, one segment being feeling. I don't know if maybe you're getting a bit uncomfortable now after sitting here for 1 hour, you kind of, you get a bit restless or whatever. Or perception. Perception is just the ability to make sense of what you are hearing or seeing or whatever. Volition is the will you have, whatever that will is. So you can divide it up in this way, and that's really what it is all about. So awareness, that's really what it is. So the nimitta also is just a part of that experience. So what aspect of experience is nimitta? It's really perception. You are perceiving something. That's something that you are aware of, and that perception we kind of classify that as a nimitta, as a bright light or whatever it is that you experience at that particular time. Perception coming, and also feeling is there. Feeling is kind of the happiness that comes with that nimitta. Feeling is there, awareness is there, perception is there. These are the things. So who is it that recognizes it? Well, it's, in the end, of course, you know the Buddhist teachings. There is no who, it's just the awareness itself that recognizes it. So you are there, blissing out, being so happy. You don't need to be anyone. One of the nice things about the Buddhist teachings, what I always find so good about this, people often get afraid to think about non-self. They find it very scary. You want to be there, and it is kind of scary. Because especially when you think about it rationally, it seems scary because it seems like it goes against the grain, against your sense of identity. We all want to be somebody. The sense of self is precisely about being someone. So if somebody says that there is no self, it goes against everything that we feel about ourselves. So the way to get around that, so it doesn't actually seem so scary, is to actually see what happens in the process of meditation itself. And what happens in the process of meditation is that your sense of self starts to get less. Please notice that when you become peaceful, right? There's no thinking there, and a lot of the thinking mind is about yourself. It's about thinking about things. It's about talking to others or thinking about situations and justifying yourself and all this kind of stuff, whatever it is. But once that dies down, it means that there is less self there, less self-concern, because all those thoughts about yourself are disappearing. When there's less self-concern, less thinking about you, you feel better. And this is one of those marvelous ways of understanding why non-self is actually very beautiful, because the less there is of yourself, the less things are happening, the better you feel. And this is how you kind of get through this idea of non-self through the back door. And it doesn't seem so scary anymore. It's actually very beautiful and very powerful. And you start to understand how this kind of heads in the right direction, and how Ultimately, it must be a lot of happiness. If a little bit of non-self is so much happiness, boy, a lot of non-self must be incredibly blissful as a consequence. So that is the way to look at that. And then it becomes far more acceptable for pretty much everyone, I think. Even if you're not a Buddhist, it becomes acceptable in that case. Okay, so next one. Dear Ajahn, what is the difference in the day of a monk's life, normal day versus during the rains retreat? So what is the difference between the rain? It is in many ways it is quite similar. The only thing is really, I guess, the intensity. During the rains, you are more, you spend more time in seclusion, and outside the rains, you do more things like giving talks and traveling and all that kind of stuff. So that's really the main difference. So somebody like Ajahn Brahm, a very, very, very busy person, so he tries to have a bit more retreat time during the rains. But even that is sometimes difficult for him, because still then all of these things are happening. And this year it was very busy for him during the rains. But it's very hard, right, when you have so many people around the world who want to seek advice from you and always want your attention. It's very difficult. There's always things going on. There's always things that need to be done. It's very difficult to disconnect completely from the world. But I think it is important in monastic life, just like in lay life, to have times when you kind of disconnect completely and all you do is focus on your practice, meditation, and nothing else. And then you come back afterwards and you have hopefully a bit more energy to share with other people afterwards. So during the rains, basically the idea is to meditate as much as you can, and just to enjoy the solitude. One of the great things about Bodhinyana Monastery is that everyone has their own kuti, your little hut in the forest, and then you withdraw in your hut. You don't see anyone, basically. You're all by yourself in your hut. When I sit in my kuti, I can't see anyone. I can't hear anyone. I'm just completely by myself. And it's really great. It's really, most of the time anyway, it's great. Maybe not absolutely always, but when you get, especially when you have some defilements in the mind, it makes being by yourself sometimes a bit miserable. But usually it's really nice to be by yourself, not have anybody else around. And this is one of the great things about a good monastery, which has been well established. And Bodhinyana Monastery has been really well established by Ajahn Brahm in that sense, with really kind of the ideal situation for solitude and being by yourself. A lot of the inspiration that Ajahn Brahm used to establish this monastery came directly from the suttas. He was looking, how did they do it at the time of the Buddha? Right, and we want to do it in the same way at the time of the Buddha, same kind of ideas and principles. So that is exactly how Bodhinyana Monastery was established. The idea of seclusion, the ability to meditate by yourself. It was very interesting. We had a Sri Lankan monk who I know, and he stayed at Bodhinyana Monastery for a while, and then he went back to Sri Lanka afterwards. And after he went back to Sri Lanka, he went to one of these kutis that was way out in the wilderness, really, really in the jungle with just snakes and mosquitoes and elephants and that kind of stuff. And I asked him, how was your meditation while you were staying in the jungle? This is kind of almost like the ideal situation for seclusion, absolute seclusion. And what he said that was interesting was that his meditation was better, he said, while he was staying at Bodhinyana Monastery than when he was in the jungle. Isn't that kind of interesting? Why? How can that be the case? Here you have the ideal situation. And there's a couple of reasons for that. And one of them is that sometimes you're not ready for absolute seclusion. Ideally, you should have your samadhi together first. Once you have the jhanas, your samadhi is together, great, we'll ship you off to the jungle, parachute you into Sri Lanka or whatever, and great. But until that happens, sometimes it is not the best place to be because your mind isn't ready for it. And the other thing, which is very important, is that in a good monastery, if you have a good teacher, if you have somebody like Ajahn Brahm, he has the ability to lift you up, to spiritually make you feel kind of light and good and positive and peaceful. One of the powers of Ajahn Brahm, if you listen to some of his talks, when he comes out of a deep meditation, for example, and you listen to his talk, and you just close your eyes, and you don't really have to listen to what he says, you just feel the voice, right, the way he speaks, and you just feel peaceful. it's very powerful. You just feel peaceful just by being in the presence of somebody like that. And that carries you along. And afterwards, you just sit there and you kind of just continue your meditation afterwards. And this is the power of somebody who really has their act together. They have this ability to lift you up, carry you along, push you forward on the path. And this is what a good spiritual community should really be about. And that is one of the reasons why being a monastic is so powerful. If you are a monastic in the right monastery, in the right environment, you get that spiritual uplift, which can be incredibly hard to find when you are by yourself or in solitude. I don't know what you feel like when you are in Singapore, in your apartment in Singapore. It can be quite hard to meditate sometimes, right? Yeah, when you go back home, much more difficult sometimes. You haven't got the environment, you haven't got the good company, you haven't got all of these other factors, the good Dhamma teachings. All of this support you. You go back to your apartment and actually the environment is wrong. Somehow the psychology doesn't work in the same way. So it's fascinating how these things are. So and this is why we do the rains retreat. But sometimes, even during the ordinary life of a monk, even outside of the rains, you can get nice meditation, because a monk's life is very kind of varied. Sometimes it can be incredibly busy, you do all kind of things. Actually, I actually quite like to teach as well, because when you teach, you also get inspired yourself. It makes you go a bit more deep into the teaching. You look at the teaching in a new way. That actually is very inspiring also. So it's a good kind of combination to teach and to practice. So I quite enjoy that. And sometimes it's good to do charity work, to work for the monastery, to do some building work and these kind of things. That's also enjoyable, because when you do that, you actually give something, and by giving something you get so much in return that also comes back in your meditation. This is what we can give as monks. We can't, we don't give so much money usually, but we can give other things, and we should do that. Everyone should do generosity in their own way, because it's a very powerful way of supporting your practice. So in this way, you get all the factors coming together. So even as a monk, it's not usually good just to meditate. It can be perhaps if you are really, really advanced on the path, but usually you have to get all those factors coming together. Then it's very powerful. And I also like some more intellectual work. I like to do a bit of translation work and these kind of things. I find it also very interesting. It's very nice. One of the nice things about doing translation work is that it gets you very close to the word of the Buddha. When you actually translate it, you really have to get into the meaning of the words. You have to understand what's going on. So I also enjoy that as well, a little bit, occasionally, sometimes, not too much. Okay. So the last question for tonight, and this is to Ajahn Brahm. This is not means I don't have. Should I still answer it? Okay, I'll answer it anyway. So, dear Ajahn Brahm, no questions today. Okay, so no questions. So this is bad news, because this is probably going to say, "Thank you so much, Ajahn. Oh, you are so wonderful." But then I am the one who gets to read, not Ajahn Brahm. So we got to. Okay, I'll read it out anyway. See what it says. No question today. Just want to say thanks for all the kindness and compassion you and everyone at Jhana Grove had shown in the past week. It has been such an humbling experience, and I've learned so many life lessons to bring along with me. Thank you for the peace of mind. Peace of mind, not peace of mind. Okay, peace with P-A-C, not P-I-E-C. So, okay, great, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, that's wonderful. So that's great. I'll leave this here for Ajahn Brahm so he can read that tomorrow morning as well. So that's great. So glad you enjoyed it. And that is really what this meditation center is all about. And some of you have come back many, many, many years. I've seen you here for many years, which is great. Coming back again and again. So that's always a good sign here. So this is actually one of the nice things. I think it's really good that we have these kind of relationships around the world. It's nice in Singapore, it's quite difficult to find retreat centers like this, not many like this in Singapore, Eiling, It's hard, Singapore is it's too expensive, land is too expensive in Singapore to have anything like this. So it's good that we can come together like this, and we can cooperate with things. It's a wonderful thing, and we can share the teachings and share things in many different ways. That's a wonderful thing, So it's actually great that we have these relationships. And this is what Ajahn Brahm kind of builds up, And then you have kind of an international community in a sense. So this is actually very, very useful and very helpful. Anyway, that is all then for tonight. So let us just do the Arahang Samma Sambuddha together, and then we'll see you again tomorrow morning. I'll be back here tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. Is that right? 8 o'clock? Yeah? Okay. So I'll see you again tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. Let's do the Arahang Samma Sambuddha together.